Hello everyone. You might have noticed that I haven't posted any videos in quite some time. I've been continuing to enjoy my indefinite retirement from being a so-called content creator. That said, I'm betting that some of you who know my personal and professional background are curious to hear my thoughts about the current state of America. I've had a lot of time to reflect, and I feel compelled to share my views in this video. This post is audio only for two reasons. First, I want to give you the opportunity to listen to me without feeling obligated to stop what you're doing and watch me speak. And more importantly, I want the weight of my words to be the focal point of my statement. So without further ado, let's jump in. Well, the past few months have been quite a whirlwind for the United States, haven't they? Let's see. We chastised an invaded country for not negotiating its own annihilation. We begged an Arctic territory to become the 51st state. We imposed tariffs on an African nation whose GDP is 0.008% of ours because we believed they were ripping us off. And now we have Marines stationed in one of our largest cities. At some point in there, I think we might have even passed one or two new laws. Without a doubt, 2025 has seen substantial activity in the political realm. But what about results? How are people benefiting from the new administration's policies? I want you to take a brief inventory to see how your life has improved this year in several important areas. Consider the following. Do you have more robust health care? Do you have more affordable housing? Do you have more affordable childcare? Do you have more job security? Do you benefit from stronger labor safeguards? Do you pay less for goods and services? Do you enjoy more advantageous banking policies? Do you notice more public protections against corporations? Now, I recognize that many of these policy areas can't change overnight, despite promises from even the shrewdest of politicians. Even so, our current administration has had months with a majority in each branch of the government and will continue to enjoy that legislative advantage until at least January 2027, which means that if progress hasn't happened yet in any of these areas I mentioned, we should see hints of improvement coming over the horizon. So do you feel the winds of political change shifting in your favor in any of those areas? Unless you're wealthy, I doubt that you do. I know that I can't point to anything in my life today that's improved this year or will likely improve within the next couple years. In fact, me and practically everyone I know have resigned ourselves to trying our best to avoid feeling the brunt of bad policy decisions rather than reaping the rewards of good ones. But boy, did we stick it to Harvard, didn't we? Thanks to our current administration, all those preppy elites up in Massachusetts are scrambling to keep their exclusive little club afloat. And that's what matters most at the end of the day, right? If we can't have robust health care, or affordable childcare, or affordable housing, or job security, or strong labor safeguards, or advantageous banking policies, or protections against corporations, then we should at least get to bring down a university that none of us ever applied to or wanted to attend. It only seems fair. Sarcasm aside, my point is, not only is the current administration not addressing many of the ills that afflict everyday Americans, it's using its time on stage to take up causes that are unnecessary and potentially disastrous for our country. One in particular stands out to me the most. In April, our president stood in front of cameras and reporters in the Oval Office and told a foreign dictator to build concentration camps so that American citizens can be sent there. I'm going to repeat that again. Our president stood in front of cameras and reporters in the Oval Office and told a foreign dictator to build concentration camps so that American citizens can be sent there. That was the most despicable public statement uttered by a president in my 4 decades on this planet. The political world should have stopped turning at that moment. Millions of Americans should have flooded the streets demanding accountability. And impeachment and removal from office should have occurred within a week. Every political news story in every major media outlet should have led with that quote for weeks. But none of those things happened. That moment stayed in the forefront of our national conversation for a couple days, usually discussed amidst a backdrop of hand-wringing about whether the idea was legal or practical or politically wise, and then it evaporated into the spring air. There's no greater litmus test for democracy than how its institutions react to a leader who floats the idea of sending its people to concentration camps. Ours failed miserably. That moment highlighted the roots of our nation's problems. A population that's some mixture of too exhausted, overworked, angry, uninformed, and apathetic to recognize bald-faced authoritarianism and mount a coherent response. A governing body that's too detached from and indifferent to the people it represents. A news ecosystem that's too hyper-focused on day-to-day occurrences to contextualize current events against the backdrop of history. A leader who feels empowered and emboldened to say and do as he pleases without fear of legal or political backlash. Authoritarianism isn't defined by one single policy, event, or state of being. Rather, it's a cluster of repressive symptoms. This makes it especially difficult for a nation to have a shared recognition of authoritarianism as it arrives. Those who spot it early will almost certainly be labeled overdramatic. Those who acknowledge it after it's fully taken root will either be too powerless or too dejected to take action, and those who stand to benefit from it will happily cheer it on. Another aspect of authoritarianism that makes it difficult to identify is that it doesn't occur overnight. Rather, it sets in slowly over time. It's a harmful policy here and an anti-democratic action there, repeated consistently across months and years. We humans are good at recognizing sudden acceleration and abrupt stops, but not gradual changes in speed. Because the human brain constantly recalibrates its sense of normalcy, we're susceptible to tolerating political deterioration if the runway between the first and final steps contains enough paces in between. In short, authoritarianism is like darkness. You recognize it when you wake up into it, but if you're awake during the transition from day to night, you won't be able to pinpoint the exact moment that it arrives. You'll only be able to conclusively acknowledge it when your vision is diminished. It might not be midnight in America, but the daylight is fading fast. It's evident in an administration whose modus operandi is exploiting legal loopholes to bypass long-accepted norms rather than serving its people to the spirit of the law. It's evident in the domestic application of police-state tactics that were developed and perfected during the occupation of Iraq in the War on Terror. It's evident in our congressional maps, which are carefully drawn by ruling political parties to ensure that congressional races are reliably decided before votes are cast in the general election. It's evident in our campaign finance practices, through which the wealthy enjoy the ability to single-handedly fund candidates, enabling elected leaders to disregard the will of the people. It's evident in the fact that our labor productivity has increased substantially in the past half-century, while wages have stagnated and costs of healthcare, homeownership, and education have soared, concentrating wealth in the hands of a few. Most pointedly, it's evident in a leader who openly muses about sending his constituents to concentration camps. Darkness is setting in across America, but I believe we can still turn this thing around. I'd like to offer a plan of action that I think could help us do so. You'd probably assume that my recommendations will focus on supporting a certain candidate or political party, or mass movements such as protests and general strikes. These things are absolutely vital for generating momentum within our institutions to reform the federal government, but I'm going to forego conversation on them because numerous people could speak to them more informatively and credibly than I could. The recommendations I offer from here are things that each of us can implement right now to empower and ready ourselves for the future. After all, I believe permanent change will only come to fruition if transformation of our political system is accompanied by transformation of ourselves. With that in mind, the first thing we need to do is establish clear expectations for our elected leaders. Whether or not we recognize it, we have red lines for every relationship in our lives, with romantic partners, friends, employers, corporations, you name it. For many of us, being cheated on by a spouse is an unforgivable sin that would compel us to seek divorce. Being repeatedly lied to by a friend would persuade us to cut off contact with them. Being swindled by a bank or corporation would convince us to permanently sever financial ties. Politics should be no different. We should expect our leaders to be intelligent, upstanding individuals who work tirelessly to improve our lives, and we should vote them out of office at the next opportunity if they abdicate those duties. Accordingly, if you support the current administration at the moment of this recording, it means that you either don't have a red line for your leaders, or you have a red line, but this administration hasn't broken it. If you fall into that latter category, I won't be able to get through to you right now. I'm not saying this from an arrogant perspective, as if I'm smarter or more knowledgeable than you. Rather, I'm saying this as a matter of practicality. If you voted for our current president, and you went on to watch him tell a foreign dictator to build concentration camps for use on Americans, and you still trust and support that president, then our expectations of a democratic leader are irreconcilable. Think of it in terms of a business transaction. If I'm selling something that I value at $1 million, but you don't think it worth a penny more than $100, no negotiation could help us arrive at a mutually accepted price. We're simply too far apart. On the other hand, if you fall into the first category I described, an individual who supports the current administration but hasn't considered a red line for that support, I urge you to spend some time identifying your red line. What's the minimum threshold of action that this administration could take that would compel you to abandon your support of it? Is it enacting tax rules that disproportionately harm the poor and benefit the rich? Is it cutting programs like Social Security or Medicaid? Is it sending political dissidents to a concentration camp? Whatever the case may be, I implore you to identify a red line immediately and keep a watchful eye to determine if that red line is breached. And if it is, I advise you to honor and enforce that red line by withdrawing your support of the administration. Otherwise, I fear that your gradual normalization of actions that conflict with your values will come back to haunt you and those around you. Now, for those of you who feel that your red line has been breached, action is critical. First, register to vote if you haven't already done so, and participate in every election, local, state, and federal, for which you're eligible. Research candidates and issues and vote even in the elections that seem trivial to you. No matter the political system, a government can only go as far as its people will allow, and in this regard, indifference has the same impact as enthusiastic support. In addition, proper government at the local and state level can serve as a safeguard against improper government at the federal level. Next, contact your elected representatives, again, local, state, and federal, and share your views on the topics that matter to you. Be calm, concise, and factual. Don't rant and don't yell. Anger isn't helpful. In case you haven't noticed, everyone in America is angry, even the people who are claiming to be getting what they voted for. So if anger solved our nation's problems, we'd already be living in a utopia. Abandon purity tests for your current and prospective leaders and adopt a utilitarian approach to politics. In a nation as large as ours, the best course of action is not necessarily one that everyone agrees with or benefits from, but rather, it's the one that creates the most good for the largest number of people. You live in a nation of more than 300 million people. Unless you plan to run for office, no single candidate will ever hold the exact same views as you. In order to accomplish some big-ticket items, you'll need to concede ground on some less important ones. Perfection can't be the enemy of good when that good is a functioning democracy. Look at it from this perspective. Politics is similar to dividing an ice cream cake that's steadily melting in the summer sun. The longer you bicker with others about the flavor and who gets to cut it and who gets the end piece, the less cake you'll get, and the only benefactors will be the bugs foraging along the ground. In America, the ants have been eating well for a long time. Next, spend a few minutes each day reading news articles published in different media outlets, those that align with your political views and those that are vastly different. Consider the facts of the articles you read and how they're presented to you. Consider which news outlets seem to most accurately report a story. Just as importantly, consider whether the stories given top billing even deserve their place above the fold. Here's a tip. If a news outlet would rather talk about a high school girl's track meet instead of a president wanting to send American citizens to concentration camps, that news outlet shouldn't be taken seriously. Expanding your news diet forces you to confront diverse viewpoints and also shows you how current events are presented to people all across the political spectrum. Your so-called side of the aisle doesn't enjoy a monopoly on truth on every issue, and you can't mount a successful political or social movement if you never care to learn how the other side receives the news. While we're on that topic, abandon sides altogether. I recognize that politics is a team sport, but it doesn't need to be, and more importantly, it shouldn't be. Members of a group are always forced to surrender some individuality and freedom as a right of membership in that group, and this can be especially destructive in the political realm. People who either overtly or implicitly coalesce behind a party apparatus face pressure to conform to its beliefs. That's how we end up with voters who will believe anything that relieves them of the pressure to criticize someone in their ranks. So declare political independence today. I promise you can still donate to and vote for your favorite candidates. Now to the most difficult course of action. Rub elbows with people you disagree with. One of the reasons our country's fall from grace has occurred in parallel with the social media age is because it's more easy and satisfying to tersely malign someone we disagree with than it is to have an honest, nuanced conversation with them. I get it. It's not fun to interact with someone who spouts nonsensical talking points and supports causes you detest. I'm not saying you have to like the people you disagree with politically, but I am saying you have to be willing to be in their presence and treat them like humans. To do otherwise would guarantee that they'll never become more like you. Don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating that we simulate the tolerance paradox. There are some people in this country who, if given unlimited deference, would gladly destroy the lives of millions. Such people should not be given any room at the negotiating table and should never know a moment's peace. What I contend, however, is that the overwhelming majority of Americans who either support or overlook today's destructive policies and deranged leaders are driven not by malice, but by moral confusion. They become scattered at sea by a current of bad incentives and can be brought back to the shores of rationality given the proper lifeboats. I've studied cults extensively throughout my life, and I've also worked at a psychiatric hospital treating patients who were experiencing severe delusions. I know firsthand that belief is a powerful thing, and that we humans are susceptible to committing our convictions to absurd, self-defeating, and dangerous ideas. I also know that it's possible to get through to someone who holds extreme views. Such people are so accustomed to receiving either total agreement or intense hatred that they become disarmed, almost incredulously so, by individuals who regard them with compassion and calmly challenge their views. This requires patience and care, as people who hold radical beliefs won't abandon them overnight, but we must be up to the task. In closing, at a recent political protest, I saw someone carrying a sign that captures the essence of both our perilous moment and our mission at hand. It read, "In a nation filled with anger, empathy is radical." My fellow Americans, if we want to transform the nation we love into a more fair, honest, and democratic place, we must be radical. Wishing everyone peace and happiness.